away we go. Okay. Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on Talk 910. You know our show. It's where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. And for those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys sitting around a bar having drinks, without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Mark Hanf is out today, but I'm pleased to have as my co-host, Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Write that number down, 888-912-1190, because you're going to use that number to answer the trivia questions for 3 vacations given away during each commercial break. That's right, we're giving away 9 vacations during this show. Now, the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by a Lighthouse Resort and Marina, which is located 1 hour northeast of San Francisco. And the vacations are free. Their only request, a $75 cleaning fee to cover housekeeping expenses. Check them out at their website, which is lighthouse4fun.com. And you can reach them at 916-777-5511. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. You'll have to figure that one out.
I'm great at that one.
Okay, our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube by typing Best of Investing Radio Show. We're also on television, Comcast Channel 26 and AT&T Channel 99 on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. Now, today's special guest is Joe John Duran, and he's going to discuss how to make faster and better decisions about money. He's a nationally recognized financial expert, and he's going to explain how we can dramatically improve our financial lives. Joe John Duran, I love that name. Welcome to the Best of Investing.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay. So go ahead, Robert. You're going to ask the first question.
Well, Joe, you know, when you start talking about investing and things like that, one of the things that I've recognized both through my own experience in my career and also just personally has been that everybody has a money mindset, and it's very difficult for them to detach their beliefs about money from the truths about money. And I'm guessing that that is exactly what you deal with on a daily basis.
You know what? Hold on. Okay, can you try that one again?
I hear you 5, and you started on 5, and then your sound just disappeared.
Okay, I'm sorry. Robert, ask that question again.
Sure. Joe, one of the things that I've found in my career and personally has been that we realize that we have a mindset about money. We have our own beliefs about that. We perceive those things to be true, and they kind of dictate everything we think about money and how we act about it. And yet, when you write a book on that topic and when you deal with that, you probably recognize something very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that everyone treats money as if it's an intellectual exercise. But for reality, most of us make decisions with our hearts and with our own biases. Everyone is biased when it comes to money and has a perspective that they believe is true.
Right.
And don't almost never act in the right way because their biases and their own perception of truth overwhelms a rational and good decision. You see it all the time with people. That they often make decisions that actually sabotage their ability to actually have a really good financial life.
Right. And you know, I see this come up time and again, not only on the bad side. You talk about sabotaging your financial life, but one of the things that I've recognized is my own belief system was created through watching, you know, my parents and people who all did things best of intention, but the way they did them colored my thoughts about money. You know, for example, my father grew up with Depression-era parents, and that thinking carries over to me, and that's what I perceive to be right. Whether or not that leads me to make the best financial decision or not is questionable.
Well, I can tell you that almost certainly it does not, because we know we've done a lot of work and we've had tens of thousands of people go through very simple exercise to determine what drives and what affects their bias. And then people are either driven by fear,
right,
the way you're describing your parents, which means that your primary goal is to protect.
Right. And
so protectors, they're either driven by that or they're driven by a desire to enjoy life. We could call it the pleasure seekers. Their primary goal is satisfaction and maximizing what they can do with their money and their time. Or they're commitment people whose primary goal is to look after the people they love.
Right.
And that lens affects every decision you make. If you're driven by fear, you're probably the kind of person that delays rewarding themselves, taking vacations. Probably, certainly your parents were this way. They paid more than they needed to, didn't take the trips they could afford to take, lived in a house that was more modest than they could afford, really well prepared for retirement, really well, probably died with more money than they spent.
Right.
If your happiness, the exact opposite is true. So it very much colors your perspective and affects, candidly, not just your investing, but the way you live your life and why you work and how you work.
Correct.
So I was going to ask you there, Joe, what are the 3 money minds that drive us?
I mentioned them a little bit, and by the way, you can go online completely for free. If you go to Honest Conversations, ending with an S.com, you can go online and actually go through an exercise we created. It's a game that asks you 7 random questions and will tell you, and then compare you to other people in your age and your sex.
Oh, interesting.
To say how you are, but you're either driven by fear, happiness, or commitment. People who have a happiness mindset, which is about 30% of the population, regardless of age.
Right.
Their primary goal is to enjoy life. They tend to spend money very quickly, naturally optimistic that things will work out, often overspend, often underprepared for bad things happening.
Mm-hmm.
Fear money mind, the exact opposite. They tend to be overly pessimistic, over-prepare, agonize over decisions, and then view people who are more frivolous to be irresponsible.
Right.
And then the commitment money minds are people who sacrifice their own interests and their own needs to look after the people around them. Now, they all have really good attributes, and they all have a downside to them. So, number one secret to making great decisions is to understand your own natural bias.
Yeah.
How it might be actually hurting you rather than helping you.
You know, years ago, I used to mountaineer quite a bit, and there was this saying that they used to use in alpinism that said, the more stuff that you carry, the more likelihood you're going to need to use it.
That's a good
So
point.
yeah, and it kind of, what I take from you there is it's sort of like that with money too. You know, if you're leaning towards the pleasure seeker part of it, you may not be preparing for retirement, for example. But then again, you know, you may enjoy your life so much that opportunities present themselves that when you get to retirement, you've got other resources.
Yeah, because how do you balance that
Right,
out? You know,
right,
he
exactly.
who dies with the most toys wins. No, he who dies with the most toys still dies.
You're right.
The interesting thing you have, of course, is that I'm married for 20-some years. I'm a fear money mind as well.
Uh-huh.
And my wife is a happiness and commitment money mind. And
So
what
you
that
know.
means is that she has no trip that she isn't happy to take, no
Right.
party she isn't willing to host.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking about how much is this going to cost?
Yeah.
Where's the money coming from?
You know, we're very similar. Except my wife tells me when I'm happy.
Well, let me address the topic of wives too, because one of the questions I had for you was how do you turn money-related arguments? You know, I see this all the time in my line of work. I do home finance, so often I'm dealing with one spouse or the other. But when I'm dealing with both spouses, sometimes what you find are there are very different approaches towards money. How do you advise people to have these conversations without them sort of devolving into arguments or fights even?
So you know, about 70% of the population is married to a spouse that has a different money mind than you have,
Yeah.
which means that 70% of the population is going to have fights about money quite frequently
Right.
because you have a completely different lens on the same issue. So, for example, if a vacation comes up or somebody wants to refinance, let's say, in your
Yes.
world, the husband, say he's a happiness money mind, he's thinking about taking money out and buying a car or taking a trip. The wife is a fear money mind, she's thinking about saving the money,
Correct.
put the kids through college or do something
Absolutely.
in the future.
I want to ask Robert.
What you do is that you understand and have awareness and consciousness about your bias so that you can adjust your decision making and incorporate all perspectives, because like everything in this world, you don't ever want to approach everything from an only fear perspective because you'll miss 1,000 opportunities. You also don't want to approach everything with an overly optimistic view because then you're going to end up chasing everything and succeed in nothing.
So when I ask Rob a question, do you find most of the women want a fixed mortgage and the men want an adjustable? Because the security, safety part?
That's a good question. Yeah, you know, there are some stereotypes, but women, men, no, it doesn't. I don't really pick that one up as much, but stereotypes definitely do exist in my profession.
And I will say, by the way, statistically, of the tens of thousands of people who've done this, there is no actual difference between men and women
Oh, there you go.
when it comes to fear and happiness. So
Yeah,
I write about this in my book, The Money Code.
that's
There's our upbringings really shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Because nobody really talks openly and honestly about money growing up,
right.
we only pick up bits and pieces about what our parents do and say. But if we grow up in an environment where our parents are always fighting about money, money is scary.
Right.
If we're in an environment where both of our parents are fear money mind, we learn to be petrified about spending money. Or sometimes, in the same exact environment, people will grow up and say, my parents never learned to enjoy it. I'm going to spend my life enjoying it.
Yeah.
I used to work for a guy who was the stereotype of an entrepreneur, and he talks about his dad working out of one of those sort of trailer containers, that had a door on it and whatever, and he just went in the 180 degrees opposite direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
So our history really affects the way we think about it, and we don't concern ourselves too much. I'm not a therapist. What I do know is that we've created a checklist that allows you, both individually and as a couple, to walk through 9 steps that very explicitly lay out for you how you should make decisions, how you should adjust for how you think about things, and make sure that you make the right trade-offs so that you don't have a fight. And one of the most important things when you're having a big, important financial discussion with a spouse or with a partner is to make sure that you're most unemotional in the discussion.
Good point.
Well, also, I think it's important to, Joe, I think it's
collectively grateful for decision making.
Yeah, Joe, I think it's important to also know that you're on each other's side. You're on the same team.
Yeah.
That you're not against each other. I mean, we've had that kind of discussion before and saying, listen, I'm not against you. I'm on your team.
Right.
We're going to make a decision that works for both of us.
And I think that's what gets lost very often, because money is a reflection of our values, and the way we spend money is a reflection of our values. And so the reason it becomes so volatile so quickly is if your wife says, I want to have a party, and you think this is going to be expensive.
Right.
You feel perhaps like she's not having respect for your concerns, and she feels like you're not having respect for her concerns.
Wait, but so when
At the end of the day, everyone just wants to be happy. Everybody just wants to avoid pain. Everybody wants to take care of the people they love.
Well, hey,
Where
Joe.
we do it and prioritize it.
So when my wife makes filet mignon for herself and gives me cold cereal, should I take a hint from that? Does that mean anything?
I think she's saying that she likes you. She likes you eating a little differently than she does.
Yeah,
that's why you wrote the book.
Yeah, that's a good spin on it. Okay, Joe John Duran, I like that.
Joe, fascinating stuff. I could listen to you talk about it all day.
Yeah. So how do people get a hold of your book?
It's in all the bookstores. It's in all the airports. It's a national bestseller, so it shouldn't be hard to find. It's certainly on Amazon. It's called The Money Code.
The Money Code.
And it's written as a parable. It's not a how-to book. It's written as a story of a person's voyage to finding a way to make better choices. I think people will find it really easy to read. I can tell you that it's been on the New York Times for quite a while, mainly because I think it's written in a way that's very comprehensible, very easy to understand, but also really practical. So you'll get ideas right away that you can apply, and it'll take you about 3 hours to read it. So
do you promise that we won't fight about money anymore?
No, you'll fight, but you'll fight in a better way. But the good news is all the proceeds go to charity.
Good for you.
To help people make a better life for themselves.
And I think you touched on a really important thing, because I find this in my line of work. If you take financial information or advice or suggestions and you make them digestible and you make them accessible, I think that is probably the most important thing you can do, because a lot of people have those walls up about money like you talked about, and even the thought of reading about it more instills fear, and if you can break those walls down, I think you can reach people.
Well, here's the other thing is that, and I don't know if you have this in your book, but what happens if you hit the lottery? They're still going to have fights about money, right?
Oh, no, it'll actually be worse. Whether it's good news or bad news, any surprise will cause you to have more stress. By the way, if anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, I'm on Duran Money. I provide insights all the time about the way you should think about money. And if that's useful, it's on Twitter at Duran Money.
Very good.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
You
Joe
too.
John Duran. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That was interesting. Okay, tell you what, ran a little bit over, so we're going to go right to our first commercial break. Again, the theme is general or miscellaneous trivia. Ready for this?
Yes.
On the again, this is all over the map. That's why it's very miscellaneous.
That's why it's miscellaneous.
On the TV show, the old TV show, The Odd Couple, what was the policeman's first name who was a friend of Oscar and Felix? Hint, remember he was the same guy who ended up playing Al after Arnold on Happy Days. Same guy.
Okay.
The first three callers, so we don't want his real name. We want the name of the character he portrayed.
Yeah, character.
The first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Their website is lighthouse4fun.com. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. On the old TV show The Odd Couple, what was the policeman's first name who was a friend of Oscar and Felix? And here's a hint. He was the same guy who ended up playing Al after Arnold on Happy Days. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back.
Wow, I forgot all about that guy.
You forgot about that? God, I'm so
I used to
frustrated.
watch that all the time.
Yeah,
It's microphone.
yeah. Should have given
Sometimes it goes on. I know. I was gonna.
Yeah.
All right. So let me save this bad boy here. Save as.
Can you take the feed directly from the phone into that? Is there an adapter you can use for that instead of doing miking the speaker? There's got to be a way to do that.
It's gonna go into the microphone.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, instead of it going to the handset, isn't there an adapter that'll allow you to go from the phone plug to the XLR?
Beats me.
Radio Shack.
Really?
I would.
Really?
I don't know how it works, but there's got to be a way to do it.
Okay. You got me tweaked. But we tweaked. Watch the studio, the station will put all this together, and then they'll go, "What was all that static?" And the pluses and minuses. You know?
I'm having all these problems too, so.
All
Not
right.
doing so good.
Sounds like Frogger.
Oh, you can hear this, huh?
Yeah. Remember Frogger?
It's
Yeah, I do
a
remember
hearing
that.
test.
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Is it ready, Mr. Kramer?
Mr. Kramer, ready?
Excellent. Here we go. Well, welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host, Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. And again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia because you never know where it's going to come from. On the old TV show The Odd Couple, remember that was with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall.
Yep.
What was
That I remember.
what was the policeman's first name who was a friend of Oscar and Felix?
That I don't remember.
Okay, and the hint was it was the same guy, Al Molinari, who played
Okay.
Al on Happy Days after Arnold. You don't remember? You ever watch the show?
Yeah, I remember it when I was a
Okay.
kid. I you know.
His name was Murray.
Okay.
Murray the policeman. Okay. So Rob, tell us what's going on. You got a couple of interesting articles.
Yeah, well, it's interesting times in the mortgage business, and there are a few things that I think are noteworthy, and one of them is that I read an article, and it was talking about what areas of the country would essentially become unaffordable if interest rates went to even 6%.
Okay.
And the vast majority of them are right here in California, and a lot of them in the Bay Area. And I guess that shouldn't come to anyone surprised that lives here, because we all know that the cost of living is high. But we also, for the most part, have enjoyed a fairly robust job market. So those two things need to stay in line. But this article is interesting because it talks about how an interest rate increase would impact the ability for people to buy into that market.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that there is some validity to that, but I also think that we need to be mindful of the fact that interest rates in the 5.5% and 6% range are not all that far off historical norms.
I know. We've been talking about that for a long time now.
Yeah, and we have been at 3.5%, 4.5%, and to base the housing market payments off of that as prices escalate. And look, there's a silver lining to that too, because as prices go up, and we certainly saw this in 2013, a number of the articles I have here reference, for example, we're in Marin County. The median price of a Marin home soared 20% from $660,000 in 2012 to $795,000 in 2013. So, that enables what I like to call mobility in the market. When people have equity in their home, they can, if they have to, they can sell. If they get a better job offer, they can relocate. And when that stops happening, that system locks up, and we saw that happen in 2008, 2009, 10. So again, affordability of homes and affordability of money both play into that equation, and I think that what some people are looking for when they start talking about that is, what is the organic price point of a home in any area? And that's really hard to pin down. I would think that, if you look at that and you say, well, home prices should come down in a certain area, that doesn't happen easily with a lot of repercussions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? That kind of feeds right almost into our email that we had for you.
Oh, sure. Fire away.
Okay. So email we received. Here's a listener who says, I had a short sale 3 years ago. Is it again possible to qualify for a mortgage?
Yeah.
That's more typical now than it used to be, that question.
Well, you know what? The reality of it is it's 2014. 3 years ago was 2011.
Yeah.
Probably 2010 for this caller. But this is one of the most common questions I see. I do a lot of, I respond to a lot of questions and answers on sites like Trulia and Active Rain and places like that, real estate sites that aggregate information. And this one comes up. It's got to be one of the most frequent questions that's asked. So now, if you had a short sale 3 years ago, you have a couple of options available to you. If you are looking to put down 20%, and I'll talk about that in a second, you could conceivably get back into the market with a conforming loan in 2 years if you had a short sale. If you have less than that, let's say you have a 10% down payment, now you're looking at probably a 4-year waiting period. But before that came up, an FHA option would be available to you at 3 years. And that also applies to a foreclosure. FHA becomes available after 3 years. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with all of this is that none of these financial events, like our last caller we were talking about, they don't happen in a vacuum. So if you foreclose, what preceded that event? And what happened to your credit score in the process of that happening? And when was it finalized? Because you take some of the people that got hurt the worst in the downturn. There was a period of time that was really rough. And if they decided to walk away, which was common back then because there was no hope of homes appreciating, and how quickly that has turned around. But back then, if you had asked people on the street, they would have told you this home is never going to be worth this again. And then here we are a few years later, and it's creeping back towards 2006 levels. But when you had that event happen, did you go late on your mortgage? Were you late on other things? What preceded that, and what has happened since? Have you saved enough money for a down payment? All of these things come into the
How much of this is subjective versus regulations?
Regulations in what sense? Just
Well,
from the lender?
where the lender says, listen, by law, I'm not allowed to use a Dodd-Frank.
No, Dodd-Frank doesn't touch on any of that. Dodd-Frank is more focused on the ability to pay the new loan back. But in terms of these guidelines, these are fairly well entrenched in Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines, so the government-sponsored entities, and also in FHA's guidelines. So, and they've been in place. Now, some investors, some lenders will overlay that, is what we call it, meaning Fannie might say that you can get back in 2 years, but some investor, whatever, Chase, Wells Fargo might say, no, for us it's 3 or 4, because we don't want to delve into that segment of the market.
But now you're with RPM.
I'm with RPM, so we have various investors, and that's why our ability to find a fit, if you've got a client in this situation, is greater than if it's a single entity. We have a jumbo investor, for example, that will allow a jumbo borrower to go back in 3 years after a short sale. Unheard of.
So when you say you have a jumbo investor, I assume he doesn't weigh more than 300 pounds, but an investor, I mean, a single person or is it
No, that's an
corporation?
Institution. Yeah, an institution. On the jumbo side, it's probably a Wall Street firm that is looking for you. Yeah, they're probably a big, for example, a Barclays or a Goldman Sachs or something like that. And investor also applies towards large banks as well. So we have some of them that will lend.
They don't resell that.
A lot of the jumbo stuff is going to be held. Yeah, it's portfolio.
And they're willing to invest at 5.5% for 30 years, or
Yeah, even better than that. Even better than that. I mean, again, if you're talking about coming back from a short sale, let's get something straight. If you're talking about coming back from a short sale or a foreclosure, this is not the kind of an application that you want to send over to a call center and you want to hope that it gets done. These are going to be complex, documenting what happened, why it happened, and why it won't happen again. So you're really going to
I promise to be good this time.
Right. You really need an advocate to shepherd you through this process and work with a bank or an investor that will make the loan. And as a loan officer, it's my responsibility to understand the guidelines and know how we can best present your case for approval when you have a situation like that. But you can get back in. The time periods will vary, as long as 7 years in some cases, and for some programs, and as short as just 1 year in others.
What about a bankruptcy?
Yeah, BK is a great example. The Chapter 13, if you've been paying back the arrangement on the 13 and you have a 1 year payment history on that, you can get back into a loan.
Wow.
Yeah, it is as short as 1 year with an FHA loan.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It can be pretty lenient on that.
So I'm the audience listening, and I'm hearing all this great stuff, and I'm waiting. Come on, who is this guy we're talking to, and how do we get a hold of him?
Well, great. No, I'd be happy to help. Again, these are not necessarily easy loans to get done, but certainly we're happy to help with them. And I can be reached at 415-367-5959. Also, all my contact information is on the Best of Investing website. I have a bio there. Thank you, Edward. And you can just go on there and get in touch with me that way, and I'll be happy to walk you through. No cost or obligation.
Robert Spinoza.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we cut to our second commercial break here, actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and cut to the second commercial break. All right. Again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia. What household item is represented by the chemical symbol NaCl? All right. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse. Do you know the answer?
I do know the answer.
You do know. Okay, because I was going to say sodium chloride. Na is sodium and Cl is chloride. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Their website is lighthouse4fun.com. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190. To answer this question, what household item is represented by the chemical symbol? Remember the old periodic table of elements? There's my chemistry coming back at me. The symbol is NaCl. Don't touch that dial. Make sure that you leave your name and your email address when you call our 888-912-1190 number to answer that question. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing. We'll be right back. Mr. Kramer, you know that one?
No. Not even, don't have
Hold on, don't answer
Nope.
it yet, Mr. Spinoza. We've got to ask hard questions, otherwise I get 50 phone calls and can't answer them all.
Ain't got no educated. Or as you'd say, educated.
Educated.
Yes, thank you.
You got to educate Mr. Kramer here.
Yeah. Poor Mr. Kramer.
Poor Mr. Kramer. That 6 years of high school didn't do you any good?
My what?
Your 6 years of high school didn't do any good?
No, 7 years of high school.
Oh, that's the reason.
I was just watching that opening scene from Full Metal Jacket where Arlie Ermy is berating all the privates. And he says, was up in that guy's face, and he goes, "Did your parents have any children who lived?"
That's funny. That's one of the few.
I like that.
That's one of the few war movies that I didn't think was very good. They tried to
It
take
was-
after Platoon.
It wasn't a good movie, but that opening scene was great.
The scene
Yeah,
was good.
that opening scene where
There was
he's
a couple of good scenes in there, but the rest of it, I go, no.
it wasn't a great movie.
No,
Yeah.
for some reason. Okay, I've got one thing to talk about here.
Good, because I mean, some of the stuff I've got here we've covered a little bit of, but
I want to talk a little bit about Mark's stuff, even though he's not.
Okay.
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready? And away we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Mark Humph is off today, but we have our other famous co-host, Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the second commercial break, again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia. What household item is represented by the chemical symbol NaCl?
Table salt.
Table salt. Very good, Mr. Chemist over here. I like that.
I think that was the only question I got right in all of chemistry class.
Really? I used to remember the halogens. For some reason, I only one test I did well in chemistry. The rest of it, not so good.
Argon?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. That's your new halogens.
I forgot them all.
Neon? I don't know.
Okay. Actually, you know what? Next week, we're going to have another special trivia contest where the winner is going to win an overnight stay at the Sanctuary Beach Resort in Monterey. So relax, rejuvenate, and unwind. Experience the tranquil ambiance of Sanctuary Beach Resort in the heart of on Monterey Bay. To plan your getaway to Sanctuary Beach Resort, call 877-944-3863. That's 877-944-3863. Sanctuary Beach Resort, where nature converges with comfort and style. And get this, not only are they going to give an overnight stay at the beautiful Sanctuary Beach Resort in Monterey, but they're also going to have breakfast delivered to the room and a split of wine and a golf cart to use around the property while you're there. Is that a smoking deal or what?
Just use the cart before you drink the wine.
Yeah. Go on their website, the Sanctuary Beach Resort in Monterey. You should see some of the rooms. They are beautiful. Thank you very much for that. So next week we're going to have that trivia question contest. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
So one quick thing I wanted to bring up here. Have you heard about the new scam that's going around? This one ring phone.
No.
Okay.
No.
So here's what happens. You get a phone call,
Yeah.
and they just quickly hang up. So it says that you missed a call.
Okay.
You don't recognize the phone number, so what do? You call them back. Well, what ends up happening is that you end up generally charged almost $20 in an international call fee up front, plus $9 more per minute for the, quote, unwanted service. Sometimes what happens is you're calling an adult line or some other thing.
But if it's an international number, do you see that on your phone then?
Well, the thing is, here they said the numbers with area codes 268, 809, 876, 284, and 473 seem to be the major ones.
Yeah.
And I mean, ordinarily, don't they usually have like 011 or something like that?
Yeah,
But
you would think so.
They got a way to get in your phone and kind of make things kind of squirrely.
You know what's interesting about that? There's an app that you can use. Some people in sales use it. It's funny. I had just heard about it. People in my industry use it as well. It's called Sly Dial. You know about this?
No.
So you can pay. I believe you can pay for the service, but then if you dial someone's mobile number, it will go directly to voicemail. So if you think about that from a sales perspective, instead of possibly facing a cold call scenario where you call in and the person doesn't want to talk to you, you can then leave them a message which is scripted and very precise, and then see if they respond back. It's kind of interesting. I don't really.
A lot of times, I get that at home sometimes, and as soon as I hear it,
I don't particularly think it's my cup of tea, but it's interesting that it's getting you to call back kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole idea.
Right.
Yeah. So it's funny. We had this a few years ago. A country called Gambia that I never even heard of in Africa.
Yeah.
Totaled up, I think, $100,000 worth of calls on us or something ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hello, phone company. Try calling us. See if it's us. Anyway. So I wanted to before we get into your next article there. Mark's not here today, but he and I met with Gil Gross. Talk 910 on our station here in the afternoon. And Gil's going to kind of do some promotions for us because it's really interesting. Last week or week before, Gil had mentioned on the show that he knew of somebody or heard the story about this guy who had excellent credit, good income. I mean, everything was going perfect. But guess why he couldn't get a loan?
Don't know.
Because he changed from a W-2 employee to independent contractor.
Yeah.
He was in the same business,
Yeah.
making the same kind of income.
Death knell.
Yeah, but he hadn't been in business in that, independence.
Yeah, I counsel borrowers on that all the time. If you are a W-2 employee, no matter how successful you are in that capacity, if you decide to strike out on your own, get a home loan before you do. Because what a lender will do in the vast majority of cases, now I know there are some exceptions to this, but vast majority of cases is you will need to document 2 years
Yeah.
of self-employed tax returns before they can average your income and then use it as qualifiable.
Exactly. So here you have a situation now where this guy puts puts money down,
Right.
Non-refundable because he gets in the contract, gets the home of his dreams,
Right.
and now he can't get a regular bank loan.
Yeah.
So a guy like that could call Mark,
Yeah.
get a loan at let's say 9.5%, 10% interest, which is terrible
Right.
for
For what he was looking for.
For what he was looking
Yeah.
for. And Mark would lend him the money. It's probably 65 or 70% loan to value. Charge the guy 9.5%, 10%,
Right.
and the guy would pay it back. Mark would probably put a minimum in there of maybe 3 months or 6
Right.
months,
Right.
and then it's a type of loan where it is bankable.
Yeah.
But not at that moment, only because because of the change in the employment status.
This highlights something too that I wish our industry enjoyed a better reputation in this regard. But if you were thinking of buying a home and you had your financial wits about you, most people would approach maybe their CPA or their tax advisor, and they would say, hey, we're thinking about buying a home. Let's pencil out the tax consequences of doing this. And I think our industry can do a lot better job of getting in front of its clients and saying, if you guys are thinking about any big financial event in your life, give us a call. Give me a call. Let's talk it through. Because if you're changing jobs or moving or anything like you just described, the implications with the lending restrictions as they are now can be severe. Now, years ago, that would have not been a problem. Why? Because that gentleman could have gotten a stated income loan.
Yeah.
Okay, and he would have been fine. But those doors are shut, and they're going to stay shut with the CFPB now for some time.
But can you imagine what an opportunity for Mark's company, Pacific Private Money, because he can go ahead and lend money at 10%.
Yeah, and he's got a golden FICO borrower who's going to pay it back.
That guy's going to pay it back. So
Right.
the thing is, the reason I'm mentioning it is that a lot of times, people look and they say, "Gosh, I wish I could be the bank.
Right.
I want to be
Right.
on that side of the table." Well, if you give Mark a call
Right.
at 415-883-2150 or go to his website, pacificprivatemoney.com, you can find out exactly how you can be on that side of the table and earn a high rate of return with relatively low risk.
There are some borrowers that I talk to that they have reached their end of the rope with the process because they have something like that, and no matter where they turn, they get the same answer.
Yeah.
And that is one of those. That is a perfect example, a textbook example of a scenario that it just doesn't make sense. You wish the lending environment could provide a solution to a borrower like that, but right now those are hard to come by. Hopefully, it'll free up. Of course, you can take it to a private money lender, and that may be your best option.
Well, it's temporary because eventually that person can refinance.
Absolutely. And I think very highly of Mark and the way he operates, and I think the solution that he can offer to people in those situations is about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah. So he does a reasonable return.
Yeah.
For the investor.
Right.
And then for the borrower, well, okay, so he's got to pay a little bit more, but it's a nice secured loan and everything's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got an interesting question for you, and I don't know if you know the answer to this one. Let's say somebody comes to you for a loan, and they show you their tax return,
right?
And their tax return qualifies them for a specific loan.
Yep.
And then they get the loan from you. 5 months later, 6 months later, or even a year later, they file an amended return. There you go. You knew what I was going to ask.
I didn't know what you were going to ask.
Okay, but what is their obligation to go back and let's say the amended return is, oops, I realized I overstated my income, or I have more expenses or whatever, and they get a refund from the government. What is their obligation to tell a bank?
Okay, everybody that works for the government, I need you to take that dial and turn it all the way to the left of here and click.
Like I said, I'm not advocating this at all.
I'm going to be honest with you here. I don't know. I never see that side of the business. So once your loan is closed, funded, packaged, and sold, presumably sold on the secondary market, whatever happens. So you cannot filing an amended return. I suppose the lender would have recourse if they could prove intent. In other words, if they,
how would they even know?
Yeah, and maybe you in your best, in all good faith, you didn't know either.
Sure.
And I'll give you another example of that. Let's say you use the amended return. Well, what does that do? That means their income was not sufficient to support the loan, presumably. Same thing if they lost their job unexpectedly, right? I mean, they took the loan in good faith,
That's a very good point.
And then circumstances change.
As long as they pay the loan.
As long as they pay the loan,
no harm,
right,
no foul,
right. And you can look at your deed of trust to see specifically how the lender can treat that. But in a situation like that, I'm not usually privy to if something is found out with an amended return down the road.
Well, no, I mean, once you close the loan, you're kind of out of it at that point, right?
Pretty much. I mean, not really in the sense that we all have a national mortgage licensing system identifier that tracks all the way through the life of the loan.
Okay.
So they could come back and say, hey, why does this guy, all of his loans, all these people amend their returns? Now you got a real problem. You see what I'm saying? So if lender ID, whatever, was all
yeah, but does the IRS report that to
how they would track it? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you.
And again, as long as they're paying their mortgage, well, it's the same thing when people used to say, "Oh, this is my primary residence," to get a good rate.
Yeah,
and then they keep having 5 primary residences. You know?
Well, be careful there because that's the number one. That's the number one instance of mortgage fraud, and you will get busted on that. And what they'll do on that is there are companies that will go out there if they think there's an issue with that. Number one, there are companies that will go out there and look to basically determine if the property's been owner.
Yeah, they're going to look in your mailbox illegally and make sure that there are PG&E bills in there.
Yeah.
Hey, what are you doing looking at my mailbox?
Yeah, you don't want to do that one. And if I get a sense that a borrower is trying to disguise what will be an investment property as a primary, I'm out right there because I don't want any part of having that come up. That's mortgage fraud. Easy.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to cut to our third and final commercial break again. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. Again, this is, I'm all over the board on this one. First we had the
my mind
couple,
is full of useless
right?
stuff.
The next question we have is chemistry, and this one is now the Beatles. Right?
Oh, all right, I might be able to get
okay. Paul McCartney wrote the Beatles song "Back in the USSR." Back in the USSR, remember that?
Yep.
Okay, who was the drummer? First three, that's an easy one. Who the first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Their website is lighthouse4fun.com. Call 888-912-1190. I had to have one easy question.
That's pretty easy.
Okay, that's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. Paul McCartney wrote the Beatles song "Back in the USSR." Who was the drummer? Make sure to include your name, email address, speak slowly, spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that dial. When the Best of Investing comes right back, we're going to have some closing comments.
That is a great question. The self-employed thing that happens so many times.
Yeah.
You would not believe how often that happens.
I know. It's a great deal for Mark.
It's a great deal for Mark. Yeah.
I don't know if he funded that specific one, but
I'm sure he's funded others like it because
we're
do that. And
yeah, we're doing a thing with Gil Gross now where he's going to be doing a live read, and then there's going to be all kinds of stuff going on the web or on all the Talk 910 stations.
Oh, okay.
Doing okay, Mr. Klema?
Jawohl.
You know the answer to that question, right?
Yes, I think I do. Ringo Starr.
Okay. Well, here, let me figure this thing out here.
Yes, dear.
I can't answer too many questions at once.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. Can you make my tummy look thinner?
Yes, dear.
Well, thank you.
I can do anything you want.
you know the Joe John Duran, that was really interesting. I find that stuff very fascinating because I'm grappling with that as an adult now. You know, so much of the advice my dad gave me was great advice.
Yeah.
But it was cemented in that post-depression
era.
Yeah,
I was going to say that about the depression era.
Where you and that prevents you from making decisions that will be either entrepreneurial or take advantage of an opportunity, and you're always on that fence. It's really interesting.
Yeah, we only have 428 on this one. This is a nice short one. Okay. Any last comments?
I'm trying to think about that. How to wrap it up?
I know, what do you do when someone comes in and you can't quite help them?
Yeah, good. This is going.
Okay.
Go on.
There you go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Andrew Brown, your host. Mark Hoff is off today, but we have Rob Spinoza in the studio here as our co-host. Well, we cut to the third commercial break, and again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia. Again, we had the question on the Odd Couple, then on chemistry, and now it's on the Beatles. Paul McCartney wrote the Beatles song Back in the USSR. Who was the drummer? That's an easy one.
Pete Best.
No. Kramer, who was it?
Ringo Starr.
Ringo
Come
Starr.
on, you know the
No.
It wasn't Ringo
It
Starr?
was Paul McCartney.
Oh, wow.
It's a trick,
It's a
easy,
trick
hard
question.
question.
You know Pete Best, the Pete
Yes,
Starr.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
he was the one before.
He was
Actually, that would have been a good answer, but apparently, this is the story I heard. Apparently, and no offense to Ringo,
Right.
but apparently he couldn't get the beat right.
Yeah.
And Paul McCartney says, "Get up, move over." I'm
Okay.
gonna do it."
So he didn't quit of his own volition. He was kind of helped out the door.
That's the
All right.
story I heard. But apparently, Paul McCartney was the drummer on
Oh, wow.
Back in the USSR. I thought that
I think
was
Eric
fun.
Clapton was a guitarist on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I think he played
Never
the
heard
guitar
that song.
Oh well,
Is that a Beatles song?
it's a Beatles song.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So George Harrison sang on it.
The hymn I've heard of.
Okay.
Okay, now here's just a question that I have for you.
All right.
Okay, someone comes in, wants a loan from RPM Mortgage because you're totally independent, basically,
Yep.
right? And for whatever reason they don't qualify.
Mhm.
Do you give them the axe,
I-
shovel them out the door?
No,
What do you do?
I really try and help borrowers with, okay, what's the issue? If it's something that is curable over time, you can give them a plan. So they can walk out of there thinking, okay, I can't borrow now, but I can if I do these things at a certain date in the future.
Okay.
I think our industry also does a poor job of that in that we let too many people go their own way without the hope that they will someday be able to qualify for a mortgage.
Okay.
And so let's take the most common one where you'd have a credit blemish. Those are kind of things we uncover. There are methods, there are things you can do that are free of charge that over time will restore your credit rating and enable you to get back in. If you're self-employed, we talked about that. You've got to establish a history of earnings.
Well, sometimes you'll work with a hard money lender like Mark,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
wait till the situation gets better, and then you can refinance them out.
You know, a
It'll win-win.
savvy mortgage professional is going to be able to give you a roadmap on how to get qualified and not leave you in the cold. Yeah, absolutely.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got just about 45 seconds left before our thoughts of the day.
Well, I would say that one of the things going into 2014, some people are frustrated. Buyers are frustrated. They have been shut out in 2013 by a competitive market here in California.
That's true.
Keep the faith, people. Keep at it. The market
Doubled your price.
exactly. Inventory will likely free up, and keep working on keeping your file approvable.
And have you had problems with appraisals coming in too high because, not high enough, even though the
Yeah,
buyers ask,
that does happen, and we've also seen a few things in the city. I've talked to some real estate agents there where the appraisals aren't keeping pace with how fast the offer price is going
That's
up.
the thing is,
Yeah.
what I understand is if it's bona fide purchaser,
Right.
Willing buyer, willing seller,
There you go.
that's what the value is.
Yeah, well, lenders are a little bit reluctant to go, head over heels on stuff now, and you have to understand that. And one little nugget on that: when you buy a home, well, the lender uses the lesser of the appraised value or the purchase price.
Well,
So maybe on another segment we'll talk about that. more.
Just take 25% haircut off the whole thing. Okay, here's our thoughts for the day. Mark Twain said, "Clothes make the man. Naked people have little or no influence on society." That would make sense, wouldn't it? Okay, and a lifelong friend is someone you haven't borrowed money from yet.
Yeah,
Is
there you
that
go.
the truth?
Good point.
And especially when we were talking with our guest.
Yeah,
He
I bet he has
understood
some insight on that. Yeah.
that. Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.